Good evening, everybody. You're very welcome to the National Concert Hall for this Big Music Week event. Big Music Week is an annual extravaganza that RTE put on, and we have, in conceiving tonight, we very much thought of Barry Douglas, and so really it's Barry Douglas night, because we're going to have a chat with Barry now. Then we're going to hear him play the Britten Piano Concerto, and then later this evening we have a recital of Brahms piano music with Barry. So I'm afraid we're working you very hard today.
That's all right. I'll check the paycheck.
Exactly. Well, look, thank you for making the time. We just thought it'd be great to hear a little bit about this piano concerto. We know that Britten was born 100 years ago on St. Cecilia's Day, which was November 22nd. We'll be doing something else on November 22nd. But I think right from the offset, he was a very talented pianist. I mean, his dad was a dentist, but his mother was a pianist. And I think from the age of about 3 or 4, he was curious about the piano and developing as a pianist then. But he was an extraordinary piano player, wasn't he?
He was indeed, and from a very early age, of course, he was composing as well. And his mother was completely delighted that he was showing talent, and she gave him his first piano lessons, and was an enormous influence on him until she died.
Yeah.
His piano playing was quite unique in that he was able to, even no matter whether he played the piano or conducted, he was a consummate, not so much a performer, but an interpreter and a kind of vehicle for music. What came out the other end was this incredible pure stream of consciousness. He was quite unique.
Yeah. This piano concerto, there's a whole melting pot of styles and influences going on. I mean, there's a march in it, which is very like Shostakovich, for example. There's, would you say, maybe a French influence? There's a cadenza at the end of the first movement, which just sounds like a harp recreated on the piano. So would you say he was musically curious, picking up styles and influences from all over, possibly at the proms, as he would have gone to the proms in London in the 1920s and 30s?
Well, when he went to the Royal College of Music in 1930, he lived in the Opera House, Covent Garden, and listened to all the concerts, of course, made some great friendships. And while every composer, of course, to a greater or lesser extent is influenced and sometimes elegantly nicks stuff from other people, which is important because it's a kind of a starting point, then you make it your own. Britten, of course, was highly influenced by the people around him, like Lennox Berkeley, and it is actually dedicated to Lennox Berkeley, this concerto. Lennox Berkeley, Ralph Vaughan Williams, John Ireland, and of course Frank Bridge, who was his teacher.
Yeah.
And Frank Bridge was an enormous influence in terms of style and in terms of the technique of composition. And so at the base of Britten's writing is always this incredible, clean and well-ordered and technically consummate workmanship. And you can see it all through his music. Because
he also was a great conductor. So he had a great understanding of how an orchestra works, and he was such a great orchestrator. And in fact, we were just talking about this concerto earlier today. It's very atypical. It's not all about the piano. There's an awful lot of detail going on within the body of the orchestra. In a way, it's like a little concerto for orchestra, maybe, because the orchestra itself gets to shine, you know, in the same way as the piano part. Absolutely, it's a brilliant orchestral part. Each movement is very different, but it has many different kinds of solos. Of course, there's a huge viola solo, beautiful viola solo at the beginning of the second movement. It is, I mean, it's multicolored, multifaceted. Yeah. So the work was composed in 1938. He started working on it earlier that year. It was premiered at the proms in 1938. He was the soloist. He was only 25 years old. It got mixed reviews, you know. I think there was no doubting his musicianship, but the big question is, does it gel as a concerto, as a kind of a whole piece of what is 4 movements, not the usual 3? I mean, what do you think musically? Does it work? As you've said earlier, there's a very diverse atmosphere about each movement. It definitely does work. I mean, it's a fantastic, well-balanced piece. And adding the third movement, this beautiful set of variations, the impromptu is a masterstroke.
But there's an atmosphere to the piece which strikes me as, and I always wonder, is it a kind of, he of course was a pacifist and became a conscientious objector when he came back from America in 1942 or something.
Yeah.
And is there something of the irony? I mean, I consider the march as just one big ironic, I don't know, ridiculing the idea of militarism.
Right.
And so you hear right at the end of the piece in the coda where he uses the brass in a multi-layered way.
Yes, yeah.
He adds one brass instrument to another, and it's all kind of making light of this complete obsession with war and military.
Yes,
And I think the march is something very special. But each movement has a different atmosphere. The waltzes, you could be in Berlin in the 20s, in a smoky cabaret.
Yeah.
It's meant to be like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
The atmosphere of the whole piece is this kind of, you can't really put your finger on it, but there's something with a tongue-in-cheek, but at the same time very sincere.
Yeah. Well, Carl here is going to see if he can zoom in. We just have the score here, and we're just going to look at a couple of sections. If you were sitting really close to the stage, it would probably be much easier to make out the notations. I'm not sure how accurate this is going to be, but this, of course, is the waltz, and we have this really tender orchestral introduction. It's chamber-like in a way. You know, we just have, as you were saying earlier, viola solos and double bass, a little touch of percussion, the tambourine, some horns, piccolo, but it's very light and gentle. And then you come in here, and it's marked PP, so very quietly. I mean, how would you describe these passages here? You mentioned Berlin and cabaret, and you know, is there a little?
That's just that's one of my Ed memoirs. When I play, I try to think of imagery to try and bring it alive.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, this is definitely, of course, it's an elegant waltz, but there's something quite tragic about it too, and frail, as you say.
Melancholic as well. Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's the waltz. The other bit I wanted to point out, because this cadenza at the end of the first movement is extraordinary. It's just so lavish, isn't it?
It looks extraordinarily difficult, doesn't it?
It does. Well, it is. I mean, I know you make it sound simple, but it just shows his technique.
Yeah, amazing.
You know, these incredible scalic passages, and it's quite modal, isn't it? It's very hard to put any tonal center on any of this.
But he uses the piano to its full extent, but yet there's not one note out of place. There's not one note here which is for frill or for decoration. Each note has its own place and means something, even though it's a mass of black notes all over the page.
Yeah.
It's very, very beautiful.
Perfectly placed. Yeah. Now, you also mentioned the impromptu.
Did you want me to play the theme of the viola solo?
Yes.
I'll play the viola solo on the piano.
Yeah, that would be great. So this is from the waltz, isn't it? So before we leave the waltz, so we have this lovely viola solo here. Yeah. I don't know if the camera is still on it, but yeah, it'd be lovely to hear that.
Right. Can't do the glissandi, unfortunately. The slides up and down. So it's very simple, but very melancholy.
And it sets up the expectation then. So when your entry comes in, the scene is set. But you're right, so simple. Then the other movement that's fascinating is the impromptu. I wonder, because he was such a lover of song and German songs, and in particular Schubert, and of course Schubert was a great composer of impromptus. Do you think there's any connection in this lovely melody here and the Schubertian way of thinking, or is that? No,
absolutely. It could be one of those hymn-like Schubert songs.
Yeah.
It's a set of variations on this beautiful theme. It's very noble. It's also, I think, a little bit kind of quasi-religious, because his family came, quite religious.
Yes. Yeah.
His mother especially.
Yeah.
And I think there is something about this, in the midst of all this chaos, this this incredible kind of deeply rooted belief that there's some justice somewhere.
Yeah,
Thing.
yeah, no, absolutely.
Want me to play this?
Yes, please, if we could hear maybe the start of that. So you start by yourself here, the orchestra are quiet at the start.
Yep. And then it all
beautiful
heats up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Lovely. Well, thank you for those couple of special moments. God, I feel quite privileged really before the main performance. So we will look forward to that later in the performance. What about the other things going on in your world at the minute? Well, first of all, this year, have you been asked to do this piano concerto much? Because it's not done very often.
I was asked a few times to do it. Unfortunately, it didn't work out with scheduling issues. But I was very happy to do a piece by Britten for the very first time, which is called Young Apollo, which is for piano and strings.
Right.
And we did that at the Proms this summer. And it's an incredible work. It was written in America. It's very short. And I did an interview during the summer when I was in Rome, and they were saying, oh yeah, Young Apollo is just a lot of A major scales. And it is full of A major scales. But it's the most amazing, brilliant work, almost a kind of precursor of minimalism in some way, a very kind of manic minimalistic piece. Right. Fabulous. So it was a real discovery for me.
And that was the first appearance of Camerata Ireland at the Proms. I mean,
yeah.
You've played many times, but this
That's
was
right.
the first time with Camerata. And then there's an incredible project coming up. Is it the end of this month in Mexico, where you're doing a whole festival of things?
Yeah, Camerata Ireland's touring in Mexico. We've been there before, but this is a quite amazing thing. We're doing, I guess, 8 or 9 concerts. We start off in Mexico City. And then we're in Lyon, and then we're in this incredible festival called Cervantino in, I get the pronunciation right, Guadalajara. Right. And we're playing 3 concerts there with the orchestra. I'm doing a recital, and it's also chamber work. But we're doing all the Beethoven piano concertos, but 7 Beethoven piano concertos.
Right.
Because of course, everybody will know he arranged the violin concerto as well for piano.
Right, so that's number 6.
That's number 6.
So number 7?
And then one that was written when he was 14. So it's number 0. And it's really quite incredible.
Wow.
They managed to reconstruct this from, he wrote out just the piano part, he wrote out as 2 pianos.
Right.
So the second piano was the orchestral part, but he wrote very clearly what he wanted each instrument to do. It was 2 flutes, 2 horns and strings.
Right.
And so it was reconstructed, and it's absolutely amazing.
So quite a discovery. Has that been recorded? Or?
I'm sure it has. I mean, it's a discovery for me. It's been around in the public consciousness for a while.
Okay, excellent. So you're doing the complete Brahms solo piano works?
And some chamber music and the 2 piano concertos.
Right, okay.
And the complete Schubert with the list arrangements of the songs as well.
Right.
10 years out of my life.
Would anybody else like to ask a question?
I had a day off tomorrow, and then Simon Taylor asked me to come to the Jimmy Galway thing tomorrow night and play and sing.
Oh, right, to play as well.
Well, we're all playing a little ditty for Jimmy.
Yeah, but I mean, I wonder, do you keep memoirs? Because I think you're probably one of the most travelled musicians on the planet. Your schedule is, I would say, more because of the Camerata work as well.
Well, we musicians, I mean, that's the nature of what we do, and I'm very fortunate to be able to travel around the world all the time. And once you get into this kind of way of life, it's you feel very privileged, and it's very exciting. Every day is different, and you get to meet a lot of interesting people, play wonderful places, and you have your favourite places like here in Dublin. I love coming here, and it's just great. It's a joy.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, will you please put your hands together and thank you, Barry.
Thank you. Thanks very much.